Welcome to Lifestyle Medicine Week and our small bite-sized chat on Eat More Plants. So I'm Dr. Michelle Hauser, an internist, bariatrician, and chef with research and practice and teaching interests in lifestyle medicine and nutrition. And I'm also author of the ACLM-sponsored Culinary Medicine Curriculum. I'm joined today with dietitian and multi-talented Kaylee Anderson for this chat. And between the two of us presenting today, we aim to cover the what, why, and how of eating more plants. And I'll start with the what and the why. Okay, so first I just want to highlight the dietary spectrum. So if you take anything away from this chat, I hope that it is that as you move from the left side here, which represents the standard American diet, otherwise known as the SAD diet, toward the right side, which is a whole food plant-based eating pattern, that each step of the way you're achieving numerous health benefits, and meeting people where they are is really important on that journey. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine recommends an eating plan based predominantly on a variety of minimally processed vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. And there are many approaches to predominantly whole food plant-based eating patterns. And many of these are rooted in cultural food traditions from around the world, including blue zones. Evidence-based diets that represent shifting along this spectrum are varied and include entirely whole food plant-based diets, healthy Mediterranean style diets, DASH diets, low-fat vegan, and various vegetarian diets. And all of these are in line with recommendations from the American College of Cardiology, the American Heart Association, the American Cancer Society, the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, and the American College of Endocrinology, Health Canada, and many, many others. And I should note that all of the references I've included in my slides should be either posted in notes or at the end of the presentation. And while most of what I'll focus on is disease prevention and treatment, I do want to highlight something that comes up a lot for patients and others when I get asked about diet, and that is, is a vegetarian and vegan diet safe? And while I'm not only talking about vegetarian and vegan diets today, just want to start out with putting that on the table, which is appropriately planned vegetarian, including vegan diets, are healthful, nutritionally adequate, and may provide health benefits for the prevention and treatment of certain diseases. These diets are appropriate for all stages of the life cycle, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, adolescence, older adulthood, and for athletes. So even for those moving to entirely whole food plant-based diets, appropriately planning them will provide you with all of your nutritional needs, regardless of what your personal health and life stage goals are. So in terms of disease prevention and management, I'll start with cardiovascular disease. And that's because healthful plant-based diets protect against cardiovascular disease, which is the leading cause of disability-adjusted life years globally for those 50 years and older. When comparing vegetarians versus non-vegetarians in studies, they have been shown to have a 29% lower risk of ischemic heart disease. In another study comparing increasing plant foods in the diet and decreasing animal foods in the diet, this pattern was associated with a decreased cardiovascular disease risk of about 16%, more than 31% decreased risk of cardiovascular disease mortality, and more than an 18% risk of decreased all-cause mortality. And plant-based diets also improve risk factors for cardiovascular disease, including lipids and reducing blood pressures, and can be helpful in secondary prevention of heart failure. Possible mechanisms for these improvements and improvements in the other disease topics that I'll cover momentarily are that predominantly plant-based dietary eating patterns are higher in fiber than other types of diets, also higher in unsaturated plant fats, potassium, and antioxidants. They're also lower in things that could potentially be harmful, including cholesterol, heme iron, saturated fats, and nitrate preservatives. Plant-based diets are linked to healthier body weights, lower inflammation, reduced risks of type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. They're also linked to improved endothelial function and gut bacterial profiles, and increasing the proportion of plant proteins specifically compared with animal proteins is inversely associated with cardiovascular disease risk and all-cause mortality. So very closely linked with heart disease are topics near and dear to my heart as a bariatrician, which are overweight and obesity. So plant-based diets in this study mentioned here were associated with lower body mass indices. And the study referenced here looked at sequentially becoming more and more plant-based, comparing non-vegetarians with other degrees of vegetarianism all the way down to vegan. And with each step toward a more plant-based diet the participants made, these groups were associated with lower body mass indices. Meta-analysis of interventional studies comparing weight loss between those assigned to vegetarian and non-vegetarian diets showed greater weight reduction in vegetarian diet arms. And one of the key guidelines for management of overweight and obesity, put out several years ago, cited that there was a high level of evidence to support low-fat vegetarian-style diets without a formal energy prescription restriction. That means without specifying calories, and lacto-ovo-vegetarian and Mediterranean-style diets with prescribed energy restriction for weight loss. And so this also gets at something that I see in clinical practice a lot, which is the progressively more plants that someone adds to their diet, the less and less they need to focus so much on tracking calories, which can make dietary changes much easier for people as well. Closely linked with overweight and obesity is type 2 diabetes. So vegan and vegetarian diets are associated with half the odds of having type 2 diabetes. And this is after adjusting for body mass index and other non-dietary factors. And all the other studies I mentioned related to type 2 diabetes adjust for the same things here. There was a meta-analysis of 9 studies covering more than 300,000 people from 3 continents that reported a decreased risk of type 2 diabetes when diets emphasized healthful plant foods. And these, I should point out, were not specifically vegetarian diets. So again, moving anywhere along that spectrum can be particularly helpful. Plant-based diets have been shown to be part of successful treatment for type 2 diabetes, so not just prevention. And this can include reducing amount of medication required, improved glycemic index, and improved lipids, and improved hemoglobin A1C. And this was compared with other types of diets. And then there's some more preliminary or pilot data and uncontrolled trials, so a lower level of evidence showing potential improvement in symptoms of neuropathy. So probably more that can be looked into there. And the last disease topic that I'll cover is cancer risk reduction. So the American Cancer Society puts out diet and physical activity guidelines that suggest things can reduce from a lifestyle standpoint the risk of developing cancer. And the dietary recommendations that they put out align with the predominantly whole food plant-based dietary pattern. Linking back to the overweight and obesity, maintaining a healthy body weight is of great importance in reducing 13 of the most common types of cancers. And that's because 40% of all cancers in the US are associated with overweight and obesity. And again, just hearkening back to what we said a few minutes ago, those eating plant-based diets are more likely to have a healthy body weight than those who aren't eating predominantly whole food plant-based diets. Small amounts, and I should mention, there are many linkages with specific dietary factors that have been researched related to cancer. And for sake of time, I'll just mention one here, which is small amounts of processed meat and moderate intake of red meat are associated with increased risk of colorectal cancer. And so as I get ready to turn it over to my very talented colleague, Kaylee Anderson, I just want to bring again to your attention the dietary spectrum. And I think if you have any infographic to share with patients or colleagues to explain what you're trying to get at with making dietary changes, this is the one to use. And again, making any shift from the left to the right of this is going to yield some health benefits. With the more changes being made, the greater the health benefits. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kaylee Anderson.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hauser. So it is one thing to know what to do, but it's a completely different thing to understand how to actually do it in your daily life. And this part, the how to do it, is likely what most of your patients will need support with. Let's go through a few powerful strategies that you can use to help your patients put eating more plants into action. One of the most important steps that you can take to inspire and support your patients is to set an example for them by leading a healthy lifestyle yourself, including eating more plants. By doing so, you become a living example for your patients to follow. And you also have a better understanding of some of the struggles or challenges that they'll face along the way. Becoming a wellness champion in your workplace and helping to cultivate an overall culture of wellness can also be a very powerful example for patients. This can come in the form of maybe advocating for healthier meal options in the cafeteria or encouraging other staff members to join you in prioritizing their own wellness so they can also be inspiration for your patients as well. Next, when making dietary recommendations, you always want to meet people where they are. So as I'm sure you know, each patient has their own unique history and their own set of challenges, constraints, and preferences that impact what changes they'll be ready and willing to make and how much change they're able to take on. So the dietary spectrum that Dr. Hauser discussed earlier is a really helpful framework to keep in mind when you're making recommendations for patients. Even tiny shifts along that spectrum can be really impactful in someone's life. It's also important to encourage progress, not perfection. I always tell my own clients, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Just like building any new habit, your patient's journey toward eating more plants will likely be filled with highs and lows, setbacks and successes. So let them know that this is normal and help them celebrate every single win that they experience, no matter how small. Another useful strategy is to build momentum. So your patients, when they get started on their journey, help them build momentum with some easy wins. And one way to do that is to focus on the positive when they first start out. So help them set goals around what new foods or recipes they will add to their life instead of focusing on a list of off limits foods or what they quote unquote can't have. This will get them started on a positive note and will orient them toward seeing all the new and delicious plant-based foods that they have to choose from. And they'll, see eating more plants as a path of abundant possibilities instead of one that is narrow and restrictive. Another way to build momentum is to help them make really simple swaps. These are swaps that they will barely even notice. So some examples might be swapping cow's milk for almond or soy milk in their morning cereal, or if they're up for it, trying a black bean burger with all their favorite toppings instead of a regular burger. Swaps are easy ways for them to just kind of dip their toe in and feel successful quickly without feeling too overwhelmed when they first start out. And as they build momentum with those early successes, you can use this roadmap to help guide them in trying more plant-based meals. So first, simply help them identify the plant-based meals and foods they already know and enjoy. Maybe it's oatmeal and fruit or something as simple as an apple with peanut butter or hummus. This way, they're starting off with at least a couple foods or meals that feel familiar to them. Next, guide them in adapting some of their favorite meals to include more plant-based food. So still familiar, but with a little bit of a tweak here and there. This might be reducing or removing the ground beef from their tacos to make more room for sauteed peppers and pinto beans. And finally, when they feel ready and up for it, they can begin incorporating some new plant-based foods or recipes each week. And next, you always want to make sure it is delicious. So pleasure and enjoyment are key components of the eating equation. So it's also important that our recommendations taste delicious. Most people are not going to be able to stick with changes to what they eat if it doesn't taste good to them. So a few ideas for this one Experimenting with fresh and dried herbs and spices, citrus, or flavorful vinegars can help people inject more flavor into their meals. Another fun tip is adding umami to meals. Umami is the fifth flavor, along with sweet, salty, bitter, and sour. It's sometimes described as a savory flavor, and it's often the flavor that we associate with meat. So adding these to plant-based meals can be really helpful for people who might not be enjoying the flavors of more plant-based foods, because many plant-based foods also have umami flavor. So tomatoes, especially cooked tomatoes, mushrooms, miso paste, tamari or soy sauce, olives, all of these plant-based foods add that savory umami flavor. Plant-based cooking might be new to many of the people that you're working with, so also be ready to recommend a few cookbooks, recipe websites, or even a virtual or local cooking class that they might be able to take. And because eating more plants is a lifelong change and not a temporary diet, we want to set patients up for long-term success. Some ways of doing that include helping them to identify a support network. And this is really important for people sustaining changes that they make. This could be family members or friends who might be willing to embark on this journey with them, a community group, or even a support group within your practice or the health system that you work in. Having access to a registered dietitian educated in plant-based nutrition or a health coach can also be a valuable asset. So if you've been thinking during this conversation that you don't have time to help patients with all of these different strategies, then having someone like a dietitian or a health coach, these are people that can provide that support and additional hand-holding for patients. And last, helping patients to prepare for moments in life that may test their new eating habits. This could be social situations, travel, busy days where meal planning and meal prep fall to the end of their very long to-do lists, and even situations like isolation or alone time, a lot of the challenges that people have faced over this past year. Having a plan in place can help your patients feel more confident and more resilient when they face these various life situations and challenges. And the American College of Lifestyle Medicine is here to support you as you support your patients with many wonderful tools and resources. If you're interested in learning more about nutrition and earning continuing education while you do it, then enroll in the brand new Food as Medicine course. This course is a thorough education in the powerful role that food plays in health, longevity, and disease. And as lead faculty of this course, I can tell you that you won't find a course as robust as this one. If you're interested in introducing a culinary medicine program, then download the free culinary medicine curriculum developed by our own Dr. Michelle Hauser, who we heard from earlier. It was created for health professional programs, but it can be easily adapted for other environments, including patient education. And it is such a valuable resource, you won't believe that it's free. Another free resource, the Food as Medicine Jumpstart Guide, is a fantastic way to help patients get started with eating more plants, especially if you're unable to provide that ongoing support yourself. This downloadable guide includes basic education on plant-based eating, FAQs, recipes, meal planning guidance, essentially everything that someone would need to get started. And the whole food plant-based plate that you learned about earlier is another wonderful teaching tool for those who are just getting started. There's an adult version available to you and also a version for children, tweens, and teens. And last but not least, the Whole Food Plant-Based Eating on a Budget Guide walks patients through how to eat more plants in an economical way. Another really valuable resource for your patients. So thank you so much for being here with us to kick off Lifestyle Medicine Week 2021. We hope that you are feeling inspired to guide your patients toward getting more plants on their plate, and that you'll tune in to all the other upcoming events this week.
All right, and as promised, for anyone interested, I'll just leave each of the slides with references on them up for a few seconds so you can take a screenshot